Attention guests, today is a very special occasion.
Our little baby's all grown up.
It's your birthday.
You've just got a guy that's mercilessly punching another guy in the face, and then he just looks up at someone else.
Like, you're next.
Lino, qu'est-ce que tu crois que t'es en train de faire là?
La seule chose qui en vaille la peine.
I am the most complete fighter in the world.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
You can call it the art of fighting without fighting.
Stick around. Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
Dodge this.
Happy birthday to us. You're not going to believe it, but we have made it one calendar year. It's episode 23 of Dodge This Action Movies Unleashed. And this is our birthday episode. And to celebrate it, we're going big. We're going French. And to celebrate it even harder, Matthew is not here. And I've got an upgrade. I'm not going to lie. We've pushed the boat out for this one. And I'm very excited for this episode. Joining me to talk about Lost Bullet 2 or Balle Perdue 2. Thank you very much. That's A-level French in action. It is everybody's favorite. Don't know if he's going to like me referring to him as this grumpy uncle and comedian. It's Nick Helm.
Hello. I don't mind that. That's fine. I don't think I was a grumpy uncle.
No, actually, I would say uncle is lovely, Nick Helm. But the rest of the time, people might describe you as the grumpy type.
Yeah, but until they know me. And then when they know me,
that's right,
they'll realise I'm a cunt.
there we go. He's here.
And we're off. Happy birthday.
Welcome, Nick. For those who don't know, because obviously this is an international podcast with immense global span, Nick Helm is ostensibly a wonderful British comedian. But also, Nick, I've noticed that quite recently you've been doing a bit of podding yourself, although it is sort of a live show disguised as a podcast. You've done a film quiz show / pod.
Yes.
Did you enjoy that?
Do I enjoy it? Yes, I do. It's quite new. I used to, the producer of the podcast has basically been trying to work with me for 10 years on something. And then this podcast came along and we started doing it. And it's a film quiz. I'm obsessed with films. So I just watch films all the time.
You have come to the right place, mate. Thank goodness.
My main goal in life is to see every single film ever made. Which is an impossible task, but it's one filled with frustration.
How's that going?
I mean, I've seen a lot.
It's a Sisyphean task, isn't it?
Yeah, but you kind of you can't go into it with
every time
agenda.
you see all the films roll back to the bottom of the film mountain and you have to see all the films.
Sure. I don't think that. Really it doesn't quite work like that. No. It's like when you get to the top of the mountain, they've built more mountain. You'll never reach.
That is better.
You'll never reach. It's a bit like the film The Englishman Who Went Up a Hill But Came Down a Mountain, in a way, where they just keep building dirt on the top of it. And it is dirt because, films aren't as good.
Because not all films are good.
They're not anymore. Yeah. Yes. So that's, but yeah, I do the film podcast. But also I used to do a radio show which became a podcast called Fan Club with my friend.
Right, with Nat Metcalf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're starting.
Good old Fubar Radio.
And we're starting up another, like a continuation of that, but it's the same but different for legal reasons.
Lovely.
So yeah, I am the king of the podcast and the king of the film podcast.
I mean, it's a heavy crown.
With my sword to slay
pretenders to the throne.
Simon Fielder. Matthew Hyton is not on holiday. I've slayed him.
You've slain him already.
You've done 20. This is the 23rd episode, but you've been going a year, so that's less than 2 a month.
Yeah. The idea is it's bi-weekly, fortnightly.
But you did like the first few where you did one a month.
Yeah, I think initially it wasn't quite as strict. And then we sort of were like, let's do it every 2 weeks. And then the reality of aligning everybody's schedules such that we could turn it over every 2 weeks. It's just, well, you're the king of podcasts. It seems like, you just turn up and then you talk some shit and then you send it to the internet. But it actually takes a really long time, especially when it's about a specific movie. That's an immediate 2-hour prep time for the podcast. Then you've got to both be available at the same time, record it for an hour to 2 hours. Then Muggins, wants to make it sound nice and edit it. That's another few hours. You're looking at the best part of a day. And one day every 2 weeks, is actually quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, but then if it was your job and you only did 1 day every 2 weeks, then...
Be brilliant. But you'd be broke.
1 day every 2 weeks? Well, I don't know. Because if it was your job...
Well, I don't know. It depends what your day rate is, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if making this podcast was my full-time job, I would probably be able to churn them out a bit more regularly. Sadly, both Matthew and I have to do numerous other things to keep the proverbial wolf from the door. So busy boys trying to dovetail our schedules. Anyway, he's not here, but as you know, Nick, because you've listened to all of our previous episodes, whenever Matt isn't here, I will constantly pester him until he sends an apologetic voice message. And since this was our birthday episode, and he's basically forgotten my birthday. If this was real life, right? He's forgotten my birthday, so it's very, very offended. Anyway, he's sent a message, and I'm just going to play it in for the listeners and for you, so you could feel what it feels like if he was here in the quote-unquote room with us.
Okay.
Hi there, everyone. Still away, still off doing all the saving the world stuff, walking away from explosions, and just, really getting the day-to-day stuff done. Wish I could be there. Happy birthday, the podcast. Woohoo, 1 year old. Hope Simon and Nick are treating you well, and all the pow, 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 swish, swish, hit, kick is getting you what you need. That's the message. Matt out.
I would have done another take on that.
Yeah, fair.
But sure. And I think you should stop thinking of it more like it's like a wedding. It's like a wedding anniversary.
Yeah, and he's forgotten it.
Yeah, and he's gone on holiday
with
by
his
himself
mates.
Without you. You should be together, but he's decided to go solo.
Yeah, sad.
It's a
isn't
shame.
It? Very
it's
sad.
Well,
I'm going to be in London in a couple of weeks, so hopefully I can track him down and then also demand he records a voice message. I've also got a button that makes this sound since it's our birthday. So that's nice, isn't it?
That's good. That's like no expense spared. That is, you've pushed the boundaries.
You know when you've sort of got a new toy and you want to make it do all the things? That's very much me. With podcasting, even though I'm a year in, I was still very excited by it, and the technology that allows you and I to do a podcast as if we're in the same room when we're separated by a common English channel. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's magic. It's magic, but also you don't feel like you have to learn it all at once, Simon. It's a thing that can just grow at its own rate, and also you were talking earlier about you wish that you could do more. If this was your full-time job, then you'd be doing more and more and more podcasts and it would take over. But this is what it is, and just accept it for what it is and love it for what it is. Yeah? And don't try and make it something that it isn't.
You sound like my therapist.
Yeah, I've just had that's why I had to be, because I had therapy and then I had this and then I've got another thing after. But it's like, this is wedged in between. I needed to just reset myself just before I came on and did this, because I just had a therapy session.
That's actually great, though. That's probably a really good frame of mind to come into this, I would hope.
No, because we've got a lot to put to bed next week.
Been unpacking a lot.
Yeah, well, basically unpacked. I took the car apart this week, and then I've got to put it back together again next week.
Can't put
it's
it
in
back together.
pieces in the garage, and we're in the garage. We're in the garage floor. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
boy.
all right.
Well, I'm right there in the garage with you. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah.
Listen, not to derail this lovely chat, but you are a man obsessed with movies. How do you feel about action movies? I know that's a very broad stroke, but
No, I think
how do you feel about genre action movies?
That's a good question. That's a good place to start it from. As a child to teenager, action movies were my favourite. You know, I grew up being a massive Arnold Schwarzenegger fan.
Yes.
And then, but Arnold Schwarzenegger was kind of like, I think I probably went to see Twins in 1988 at the cinema. And that's probably what got me into Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mental. What a weird way in. I love it.
I think that for our generation, that's not actually as weird as you think. I think maybe that's not how you got into it.
Yeah.
But when I'm actually thinking about it, that's kind of like, that was my first Arnold Schwarzenegger going to the cinema experience, and his career was sort of like, you know, he did Terminator in '84, and then, you know, Commando, Predator, Red Heat, all of that stuff. I always used to see his pictures in video shops. And then going to the cinema to see Twins was kind of like maybe my first introduction to him. I'd kind of already seen Masters of the Universe with Dolph Lundgren in it. And even then I knew that Dolph Lundgren was kind of like an imitation of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Wow.
But I think and then I remember posters for Total Recall at the cinema, which would have been 1990. And then I remember my friend getting out Total Recall from the video shop with my friend's dad. And I remember I wasn't allowed to see 18s. So the first time I watched Total Recall was sat cross-legged on my friend's floor, staring at the carpet whilst I heard it play out as a radio play.
No.
I didn't watch it.
You weren't allowed to look at it.
I didn't even look at it, and even.
But you were allowed to hear it.
I heard everything. It was much worse because it was, and also I think when Total Recall was made, it was probably the most violent film ever made up to that point. It was, and when you listen to the sound effects, I think
just
it's
a lot
worse.
of people hitting melons with hammers and stuff.
I think it was much worse, but I was never into Stallone up to that point. And then I tell you what the turning point was. When Terminator 2 came out, I loved Terminator 2. And then I think there was an Arnold Schwarzenegger season at the beginning of the 90s on ITV, which was sponsored by Diet Coke. And I think out of the films, there was, I think it was Red Heat, it was Commando, it was Predator.
Solid.
And it was, and it was Raw Deal. And I think it was those four films. And Conan the Barbarian.
That's your Arnie starter pack, basically, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think Conan the Barbarian was one. So there must have been the sixth one, and I don't know what that was. I remember my sister went to see Kindergarten Cop, but I was too young. And then I remember in 1993, my parents snuck me in to see Last Action Hero. And the turning point for when I went full-blown Stallone, Bruce Willis, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh, with Die Hard, I remember that was an 18, and it was lent to me on VHS, and I would sneak it in because we had a VHS player in the living room. And my mum would go and pick my sister up after school, and it would take about 10 to 15 minutes. So I would watch Die Hard in 10 to 15 minute installments while my mum went to pick my sister up.
Beautiful.
And then, so the real catalyst for this all was I was so big into Arnold Schwarzenegger. I even watched stuff like Dave, where he had a cameo. But just for the cameo, and I had Arnold Schwarzenegger's Arnold's Fitness for Kids book and all this other stuff. And then there was the episode of Aspel, which was Michael Aspel was kind of like a TV chat show, like a mainstream evening, kind of like a bit classier than like daytime TV. He was kind of like the equivalent. There was Aspel and Parkinson, and Aspel felt like he was a bit more ITV, a bit more mainstream, a bit more commercial.
Right.
And Aspel
he's like the Jimmy Fallon of his time.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just trying to pull it back, for the kids.
They did a special episode in 1993 when they were promoting Planet Hollywood, and Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis all turned up on an episode of Aspel and promoted Planet Hollywood to the extent that Michael Aspel quit the show after that because he felt like it was so commercial and it was so cynical that he was just like, they basically hijacked the episode and turned it into a commercial for Planet Hollywood. But they were all promoting, it was such a golden year for cinema because not only was Jurassic Park out that year, but they were all promoting Cliffhanger and Demolition Man, Last Action Hero and Striking Distance. And
it started so well, that
I
list.
know. and Striking Distance,
and also Striking Distance with Sarah Jessica Parker,
where he's he plays a cop on a barge. It's quite. It's not peak Bruce Willis, but
no.
But if
it's
we'd
not,
known what
it's
was to
by
follow,
no means the worst. Yeah,
no. It actually seems quite good in retrospect.
Yeah, I remember enjoying it in a medium way, even back in the day.
But then, so I think Arnold Schwarzenegger started the 90s very strong, and he sort of like peaked with True Lies, and then Sylvester Stallone just basically ran away with it. He was like, it felt like there was a Sylvester Stallone film in the cinema like almost every fortnight in the 90s. It was brilliant. And
what a time.
And it was just the time that I was going to the cinema by myself, I was turned into a teenager and I was going and buying my own cinema tickets. So, I'd see Daylight and Assassins and The Specialist and Judge Dredd and, there were others, I'm sure. But
they were four great quick picks, to be fair. I don't know if I could have, I definitely wouldn't have pulled Daylight out of my bumhole if I was forced to list them. But yeah, Assassins, of course, was almost a remake of John Woo's The Killer, but it didn't quite happen in the end.
Is that how it started? Because the Wachowskis wrote it.
I believe it started as that, yeah. The movie that's been threatened to be remade for the last 20 years still hasn't happened. Apparently there's another one in production. So that is a great foundation. I mean, and I think, mine is not dissimilar. We both grew up around in the same time. I think 80s, 90s, a lot of rented VHSs solidified it. Fast forward to now, and last episode we talked about Accident Man 2, Hitman's Holiday, the Scott Adkins movie. And I said at the time I was nearly going to talk to someone else about it. I teased you, Nick, because we were originally going to have this chat a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And to my delight, when I messaged you about it, you said you are a fan of Scott Adkins. And that is something that warms my heart, but also you're ostensibly the first person that I haven't had to introduce to Scott Adkins on the podcast, which warms my heart even further. Are you entrenched in the modern sort of DTV action world? No,
I was exclusively Arnold Schwarzenegger until Stallone kind of took over. And now I would say, I think probably the way I look at it is that, and Bruce Willis, but Bruce Willis I don't really consider. He made some action movies, but he also made comedies and lots of other different things. Whereas I would say Arnold Schwarzenegger was my gateway into action movies. And I think he made, throughout the 80s and even the 90s, he made a lot more fun movies. His movies always seemed to be like borderline comedies. Like the action was so over the top and so not grounded in reality that it seemed like escapism and fun. Like Commando is one of my favorites, where it's like 88 minutes of killing people and then saying something funny afterwards. And I love it.
That was my gateway to Arnie, I think, that movie.
That's the one where you kind of like go, if you don't like Commando, you're probably not going to like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But,
his entire oeuvre, yeah.
You can draw a line between Commando all the way to Batman and Robin. Do you know what I mean? And you can kind of go, oh, I see, that's what they were aiming at. That's what they were going for. Whereas I think in the 80s, Stallone was, Stallone started out as an actor as a writer, and he was slightly loftier. And I think that, I've never really particularly enjoyed the Rambo film. Well, I enjoy First Blood. I think that's an excellent film. And I have a real soft spot for Rambo 3. And then when, Rambo 4 came out years later, I really enjoyed that. But I never really liked Rambo 2. And it's kind of, and it feels like Stallone was always trying to do kind of like realism as well as, and I think Rambo 2 has a couple of one-liners, like when he's in the parachute and he goes, "Oh, I was hanging around," and you kind of like go, "That doesn't sound right coming out of Rambo. It's
not your thing, mate."
It's not his thing. And I think Stallone really came into his own with action films, weirdly, in the 90s, just as Arnold Schwarzenegger was kind of cooling down. And but I was never kind of like into direct-to-video kind of action movies. I was never a huge... I kind of got into Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I enjoyed stuff like Nowhere to Run. I love Hard Target. I think that's absolutely incredible. But I love Hard Target.
Arguably his finest work, mainly for John Woo, though.
I'd say John Woo and Lance Henriksen and Arnold Vosloo and Wilfred Brimley.
Vosloo.
It's got an incredible cast to it. And
great supporting cast, in fairness.
There's that bit at the end of Hard Target, which is like, I've always thought, with my eyes, I always found it a bit weird and I can never put my finger on it. And it's the bit when, at the end... Lance Henriksen gets set on fire and all the fire is licking up his neck, and then he just takes his jacket off and he puts it out, and you kind of go, there's something a bit weird about that shot. And then what's weird about it is that it's Lance Henriksen and he's actually set on fire. And there's a bit
and it's too much. It got a bit out of control.
It's licking up his actual neck, and he takes the fire, and you kind of like, you never see that. You never see an actual actor set on fire where you've got the, he's not like a stuntman or anything. It's like Lance Henriksen's on fire.
It's not like his whole head is covered in gel and he's wearing a crash helmet. It's like, oh, that's escalated.
He's sort of like taking it onto himself to like put himself out, and
stays in it though, doesn't he? Stays in it. Fair play to old LH.
I think Hard Target is a real good movie, and so I think.
So you dabble, is what you're saying. Well, you dabble in the DTV world. I
think the way that those guys kind of survived was that, you'd have your tentpole movies like the Schwarzeneggers and the Stallones and the Willis movies, and then in between that you'd have the direct-to-video stuff, and you'd have kind of like your B pictures that Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren were making. And I've got such a soft spot for Dolph Lundgren. He's probably my favourite out of all of them. And when they made the Expendables,
he's still out there. He's still putting them out.
He's Kindergarten Cop 2. I mean, have you done that on the show?
We have not. You'll be surprised to hear.
Have you ever seen Dungeon Siege 2?
Dungeon Siege 2? I don't believe I have, Nick.
There's the Jason Statham Dungeon Siege movie.
What is Dungeon Siege? I've never even heard of this.
It's called something like The Return of the King, or it's called... Uwe Boll made a movie with Jason Statham, Ray Liotta, Burt Reynolds. It had this huge cast, and Jason Statham plays a farmer called Farmer, and it's like this medieval Lord of the Rings ripoff where they've also managed to get Gimli from Lord of the Rings in it, and you kind of like go, well, he's actually what's his name, Jonathan Rhys-Davies, and so it's just this really kind of, it's a Uwe Boll movie, so it's kind of listed as one of the worst films ever made. And then they made a sequel to it.
Of course they did.
Starring Dolph Lundgren. And what's interesting about the sequel is that Dolph Lundgren looks cold throughout the entire movie. like he's wearing a jumper. There's like a romantic scene in the bed where he's wearing a jumper. You know, when you're cold and you don't move that much, you're just basically trying to retain all your energy to keep warm. Yeah. There's like
your body's shutting down because it thinks you're going to die.
It's like that. It's like Dolph Lundgren is kind of like on a bed, but he looks really cold and uncomfortable. They're obviously filming in a barn in Bulgaria, and there's no budget and there's no warmth, and you can see like the steam coming out of their mouth. It just looks like an absolutely miserable film to make, and he looked very uncomfortable. And me and Nat met Dolph Lundgren when he was promoting Creed 2, and we got to interview him.
Oh, that's quite cool.
And he was really lovely.
I'd love to ask him a few questions.
I think Dolph Lundgren is kind of like the people's champion.
Yeah. Well, he's just, sort of somehow, I mean, I think there's probably a period in the last 10 years where he wasn't in movies, but he's sort of having a resurgence, like the latter day Universal Soldier sequels that he pops up in. He directed a movie called Castle Falls during COVID. I mean, yeah, he's also directing movies now, I think, and like lending his sort of production weight to get stuff made. One of which co-starred Scott Adkins, the aforementioned Castle Falls.
I can't remember how I got into Scott Adkins. And I wouldn't say I'm into Scott Adkins. What I would say is that whenever he pops up, I'm always delighted to see him. So he was in Expendables 2, but I think I was aware of who he was before Expendables 2. But I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Expendables, the Expendables movies are kind of, they're like poison chalices, aren't they? Because it's great that they're all doing them, but like they're rubbish.
Yeah.
Although I love that.
With one hand, they giveth so much, and with the other hand, they absolutely don't deliver a good enough movie.
I can kind of understand with the first one. I just think the first one is actually quite a badly made film. And I think Stallone was taking on too much, and he should have definitely let someone else direct it. And then when they made the sequel, Simon West directed that. And it's kind of like they overcorrected it because the jokes are actually awful in the second one. And it's this really weird, the violence is like, they like basically hack. It's only implied, but they hack Jean-Claude Van Damme's head off.
Oh, nice!
And they have it in a bag at the end. They have it like in a sack, and you kind of like it feels like bullying because Jean-Claude Van Damme, JCVD. He always wanted to be
bully JCVD.
He wanted to be part of that gang, didn't he? And then he turned down the original because he said that the script wasn't there. And then when it made loads of money, he was just like, all right, I'll do the sequel. So they put him in the sequel.
Yeah.
And then there's a scene at the end where they've got his head in a sack, and Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and Willis all have a good laugh about it. And
oh no!
And you kind of like feel like, oh, he wasn't there when they filmed that, and
he didn't agree to that.
And then the third one comes along, and I think the third one is probably the best balance between getting everyone on screen together and being an actual film.
Yeah. Full disclosure, haven't seen the third one, I don't think.
It's a 15, and they leaked, and it got leaked before it aired, before it came out. And full disclosure, I went to the premiere with all of them there, and it was the best.
I feel like your disclosure was more of showing off than my disclosure.
Well, my disclosure is I think it's the best film ever made, but it was because. It was because Wesley Snipes, Antonio Banderas, Jason Statham, and Sylvester Stallone all personally introduced it while I was there.
Yeah,
so
that will help.
I think it does get tainted slightly by that, but I do like the third one. But so with Scott Adkins, I don't know. I watched. I think is there a film called Ninja 3?
Ninja 2, yes. Shadow of a Tear.
I watched Ninja 2.
Great movie.
I watched Ninja 2. And you'd have to sort of like name some Scott Adkins films, but like...
No, if you've seen Ninja 2, you're in the club. That's what I would say. Yeah, that's a great intro to Adkins.
Accident Man specifically looked like it was a lot of fun, and I never got around to seeing it. And then when I had the opportunity to see Accident Man 2, I was like, brilliant, I'll watch all the Accident Man films. But then you bumped me, so I've spent my time watching these
that's so
films
not true. I'll tell you're the Matt Damon of this podcast. You get bumped. Too busy. But hey, still watch Accident Man 2 because it's a treat. Listen, we've already been going for a whole while, and we haven't even wheeled into the multiplex yet. Nick, do you fancy having a look at a few trailers with me?
Sure,
right quick?
Absolutely. Let's watch the trailers.
Welcome to the party, pal.
All right, I'm starting with the one that I'm most excited about. John Wick 4. We already had a sort of teaser trailer. We got a second trailer for John Wick Chapter 4 in the last week or so. I mean, I was already excited about it. I don't think it's made me any more excited, but I'm delighted to see more bits of it. Are you a fan of the John Wick franchise?
Well, I didn't like the first one.
Interesting.
I loved the second one.
What the deuce?
I haven't seen the third one.
Oh, boy.
And the trailer for the fourth. So I saw a screening. I saw an early screening of the first film before any of the reviews came out. We saw a test screening at Warner Brothers, and I thought it was fine. I just felt like I would have preferred it if it was grounded in a bit more, if the world was more real for the action to take place in.
I would say you're not going to like the third one based on if you want it to be more grounded.
Well, it was all really styled, like in terms of like all of the streets had black cars. And,
yes.
Do you know what I mean? And not like in terms of the action, but like in terms of the way the way the world was set out. I didn't love it, but so I would say for me, I liked the first John Wick, but I didn't love the first John Wick. When I saw the second John Wick, I thought that was incredible. I think specifically the fight that they have by the stairs. With outside,
Common. Yeah.
That was one of the highlights, and I always go back to that and think that's how you do it. That's brilliant. And the third one came out, and I don't know why I didn't see it. And I just never got around to it. And now the fourth one came out, and I watched the trailer for that, and I have to say that not only looks like a great film, but even the trailer made me emotional.
It pushes all the right buttons, doesn't it?
It felt like it's kind of like, that is a full piece of entertainment. That'll do everything for you. I love Keanu Reeves. The cast looks incredible. It's always nice seeing Lovejoy pop up all the time.
International listeners absolutely baffled by that. Ian McShane, who most people like probably now know from Deadwood, right, and his latter-day acting career, but British people can only recognise him as an antique stealer who, I want to say, solved crime called Lovejoy.
I think it was like Murder, She Wrote, and he wore a big puffy leather jacket and stonewashed jeans, and he had a mullet, and he would like bed attractive ladies every week whilst doing their antiques for them.
And now he's John Wick's boss. I don't know.
It's like
mad how the world works.
What an incredible career! But
what a career!
Yeah, I think John Wick. I mean, the John Wick. It's, if nothing else, it means that you get a Keanu Reeves film in the cinema every couple of years.
100%. You can't be mad at that.
And coming from a person that saw Speed at the cinema twice,
yes.
Do you know what I mean? It was like in amongst all of the Schwarzenegger Stallone movies, you had Speed that came out, and then Keanu Reeves started sort of like an action career. Yeah. And I think Speed is better than The Matrix. I think Speed is maybe one of the best action films of the 90s.
Shots
if
fired.
Not the best. It's incredible.
It is a great movie, don't get me wrong. I saw The Matrix again in the cinema when it came out, for the 25th or 20th anniversary last year or the year before. And
that'll be 20th.
Yeah. And that was just like, oh, wow, this movie is absolutely incredible still. I admittedly haven't watched Speed in quite some time. I should maybe revisit it.
I think Speed is, for me, the pick.
All there is to say about John Wick Chapter 4, I think, is that they've reminded us that his wife died. Because I feel like they slightly sort of forgot about that a little bit in those two middle chapters where they were building this enormous world, and now it's focusing a bit more on the man and not on the whole world of assassins. So that was quite nice.
Yes,
delighted that Scott Adkins is in this. You'll be excited to hear. Sadly, I couldn't spot him in the trailer. But he's in the movie, we're assured. Obviously, Donnie Yin's there. They've got bulletproof suits, Nick, for fuck's sake.
I mean, it looks great. I think all of like the stylized stuff that I didn't get on board with in the first film, I kind of was already prepped for when it came to. I can't quite remember. I think there was something to do with the marketing where it was all about. It was all about Keanu Reeves, like doing all of like the stunts and the action himself. And I just remember feeling like, I felt like in that first film, the camera was really close, and he was doing all of his stuff, but his fists kept like leaving the frame. And so I'm like, just bring the camera back a bit. And I think what's great about that fight in the second one is that you get to see it all. Yeah. And I think I'm over whatever I didn't like about the first one the first time I saw it. So I'm kind of like fully invested in that world now.
Well, you've got an absolute treat having not seen the third one. Get on that. My question is this. Are we destined for every single large event movie trailer to be soundtracked to a reimagined cover of a song for Ever and Ever Amen?
I don't have a problem with it.
Is that the only way to make a trailer now?
Well, I think it worked really well in that John Wick trailer.
I do agree.
I thought that's part of what made me emotional. And if I'm being manipulated, then go for it. I think it works really well in this trailer. It doesn't always work, but this one, I didn't mind it. I loved it.
Yeah. All right, let's move on because I'm excited, but in a different way for this movie. It's called Plane. That's it. Just Plane. Plane. It stars Gerard Butler. So I guess we already know what we're in for here. It is some meat and two veg, high concept, old school action movie. What ostensibly is as a DTV movie, but with money behind it. I think that is the sort of weird, rarefied place that Gerard Butler lives, is that somehow he or the production company or whoever is behind the Gerard Butler machine gets these movies made, movies that should probably have a budget of 10 million and they get a budget of, I don't know, 60 to 80. I have no idea what movie budgets are these days.
I would say it does have a budget, but it does have money thrown at it, but maybe not quite enough. Everything that was great about the John Wick trailer is kind of missing from the Plane trailer, where as soon as it starts, you know exactly what this is. The CGI all looks like CGI, and I think with CGI, I think the way that CGI works now is that everyone has kind of like just gone, well, it always looks like CGI anyway, so we're not really aiming for realism.
Don't spend any more time on it.
No, it's sort of like it's abstract now, isn't it? It's kind of like, well, that looks like a plane. People get the gist. And you're kind of like, but it doesn't look like a real plane, and it doesn't look like a real camera shot, and it doesn't look like, do you know what I mean? But they're not like going for that anymore. It's kind of like, we all know it's CGI, so they're just like going, well, it's CGI, but you get the gist.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, we do.
Fair enough, yeah.
But when you've got CGI blood explosions, then don't put them in the trailer, I think, because there's a bit when someone gets shot and all this CGI blood comes, and you kind of like go, oh right, that's what it's going to be like. If that's do you know what I mean? It's kind of it's already put me off.
Yeah, that is actually, it is a bugbear of mine, but I didn't pick up on the blood being CGI in the trailer. I was like, oh, they've put blood in the trailer. That is rare.
Well, and unless I'm mistaken, it looked like a CGI blood. Someone gets shot in the neck and all this blood spurts out. And
so much of the bullet hits are CG these days. But I would say that is probably the difference between a movie of this budget and a DTV movie, is that a DTV movie guaranteed CG muzzle flashes, bullet hits. Whereas when you've got the budget, we can cross our fingers that there's a little bit more practicals in the pyro and blood stuff. I think what I like the most about this, and I'm not as excited about this as John Wick Chapter 4. Obviously, that's got previous, but this just puts me in mind of high concept action movies from the 90s. There's a plane crash. There's a guy on the plane who's a prisoner, but he's got a backstory. It's like a pinch of Con Air, a soupçon of Passenger 57. It's got all the ingredients, and I just hope, like, there's two ways this dish can go. You're going to put them all in the oven. You're going to open it up after an hour and a half, and it's either going to be like a beautiful flan or a heap of hot mess.
Yeah. I think that's it. As soon as it starts, you kind of like, you know where you are with it. You're like, oh, right. It's a prisoner on a plane and the plane's going to crash. But it does, like you say, it brings to mind Con Air. And then that just made me think for the entire trailer, oh, wouldn't a Con Air 2 be great? And Nicolas Cage is still around.
Directed by Uwe Boll.
No, come on. Simon West. Get Simon West back.
Get West back. And come on, guys.
Get Simon West back and get Nicolas Cage back, and then get a load of criminals on a plane, and they go, well, we haven't done this in 20 years because of what happened last time, and then crash the plane with all these prisoners in a populated area, and then it's like the same but different, and all the prisoners go out and they run havoc on like a village or whatever.
Someone has to be pitching that as we speak. Cage is definitely available these days. Simon West.
Why wouldn't they make it? Why wouldn't they make it?
I don't know. You got Malkovich in there as well. Cusack. I'd say they're all around.
What are they going to do with Malkovich? Put his head back together.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Don't know. Maybe they just have it in a bag like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I don't think. Well, it'd be like a very sloppy bag. It'd be like a Tesco bag.
Yeah, it'd be a bag for life/death.
It's like it's a very juicy. It's a bag filled mainly with fluid.
It's like tripe.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the final trailer of this section, which is a huge-looking Indian movie called Pathan, starring Bollywood megastar Shah Rukh Khan. Now, Nick, have you seen a lot of Indian movies? Because this is a world I've only started diving into ostensibly since this podcast has begun.
I've not seen a lot. I get recommended loads on Netflix.
Did you see RRR is the big question.
No, that's on my list of things to watch, and I haven't got around to it yet. I know when I was at university, we studied world cinema, and we got taken to the cinema. I think it was near the Tricycle Theatre
in Kilburn. My old stomping ground.
Yeah, and we got taken to the cinema, and maybe it was a film festival that was on, and we got taken to see the most expensive Indian film ever made at that point, which was this big science fiction film.
Ooh. Do you remember what it was called?
No, I can't remember, but it would have been around 2000, 2001. But yeah, I'm not like... Yeah, I haven't avoided it. I just it's not first on my list. But RRR sounds like it's really great.
I think you should definitely watch RRR. That could be the gateway. It certainly has been for me and innumerable other people that I've shouted it from the rooftops to. This one, I think, people are obviously very excited because he's a huge star, and these tentpole movies tend to be pegged on the huge stars that are in them. And the trailer does look insane, but in a way that so many Indian movies look insane, where you're like, that looks like it's going to be great. And then so often, though, the scenes are just sort of sellotaped together incredible shots that look great in a trailer, but in the movie as a whole don't quite work. So I'm holding out until this one is out to see the reviews, to see if it's worth probably 3 hours of my time. Is the other thing is that they are traditionally...
They have long films.
Pretty long, yeah. But the trailer does look very fun.
I seem to remember that science fiction film being about 3 or 4 hours. I think it was 4 hours.
That's a lot.
But yeah, this trailer, when it started, I think there's kind of like a club scene and there's like neon and stuff, and it looks a little bit like the John Wick trailer. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like, oh, is this what all films look like now, really? But there's that scene where he's got the shotgun, and then he throws the shotgun in the air, and it follows the shotgun round, and then you realise, oh, they're using the camera kind of differently, and it looks like it's all CGI. Oddly, the CGI is better than the CGI in Plane, and like you said, I would definitely watch this film based on the trailer. I thought it looked great. I said to you after it finished, I mean, I laughed all the way through the trailer. And then
in a nice way.
In a nice way. It's so ridiculous, but it looks kind of like fun. But at the end, it was kind of like, it felt like one of the Scorcher trailers from the beginning of Tropic Thunder.
It is just all movie all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's and the idents that they're using, you know, it's like Chris Morris edited it. It's kind of like these huge kind of thonk, like bits of metal smashing together and words coming out of explosions. And it's kind of like, Yeah, if it's as good as the trailer, then brilliant. But, if Plane is as good as the trailer, then it's one to miss. Do you know what I mean? Because there was nothing that really stood out about Plane.
That's true. Yeah. They know how to make a trailer for these sort of big Indian movie star movies. Like it's all up there on the screen. The money is there on the screen.
It looked brilliant, but with Plane, it's like I don't think I've fully forgiven him for Geostorm, and I'm still wrestling with Geostorm.
You watched Geostorm,
yeah. Plus, I remember Passenger 57 and Con Air and Air Force One, and those were fine. It's probably my least favourite genre is action with a plane in it. So
with a plane involved.
Yeah, although Con Air is one of my favourites, but it's kind of like Con Air is pretty much a comedy rather than a
it's true. It's like an absurdist action movie, isn't it?
It's brilliant.
All right, Nick, it's time for us to load up on the popcorn or M&Ms, Maltesers. You can have whatever you want from the concession stand, and the concession stand in this case is my fridge because we are watching this movie at home. It's straight to Netflix. It's the sequel to the 2 years ago movie Lost Bullet. It's Guillaume Pierret's Lost Bullet 2.
And now, our feature presentation.
Dodge this.
Nick, I love to have the guest sort of synopsize. Can you use that as a verb?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sum up the plot, basically. But I suppose prior to that, I should say, had you seen Lost Bullet 1 or Lost Bullet? I've got a bit of a bugbear about when people put a 1 on the end of movies.
I watched both of the Lost Bullet movies specifically to do this podcast.
Aren't you an absolute champ?
I spent over 3. I didn't want to get into Lost Bullet 2, and then so I watched Lost Bullet last night and Lost Bullet 2 this morning.
Fair play to you, actually. I can't thank you enough.
That's 3 hours. That's 3 hours.
It's a big investment, actually. Yeah.
Plus, however long this is going to be.
Well, you've got a hard out, so that's why we got to get into Balle Perdue 2 ASAP. I will say, I did watch Lost Bullet when it came out, so I couldn't quite remember what happened in it. And I watched one of those weird YouTube recaps where we talked about this last episode, where they're quite informative, but all of the speech is rendered by a computer, so it's quite hard to focus, But it did give me all the info I needed in about 8 minutes, and I'd forgotten quite a few of the details, so it was useful.
I would say, it's a direct follow-up to the first film, and it sort of hits the ground running. And I thought, I don't even know how I feel about the first film. It's not like there was anything not to like, but I just wasn't really invested in it, and it didn't really hook me. And I thought it was fine. It was a bit pedestrian. But I was aware that that Lost Bullet wasn't the film that we were going to be talking about today, and we were doing the sequel. So I sort of felt like I was getting through it. But Lost Bullet 2, I thought was great. I thought I think that there was less plot.
Yes.
And I don't know what any of the characters were called from either film. I've done no additional research. I don't know who any of the actors are.
You've already done 3 hours, mate. You've put the time in.
I don't know who directed it. All I know is that I thought the first film was great. The first film was fine. And the second film, I just thought was a lot more entertaining. It felt like it was much more focused. I feel like the first film sort of had characters that I really liked. Like that French cop that on the thumbnail on Netflix looks a bit like Antonio Banderas. There's the French cop.
On your thumbnail. It could be different for my thumbnail.
It sort of feels like it was like an action comedy, like in the same way that Taxi was like an action comedy.
Yeah.
And then halfway through, it sort of like turns into like this drama, and then it becomes really kind of like the first film.
Yes,
quite dour, and
very serious.
And so I didn't really know. It felt like it was a bit like
tonally, not quite
personality. Tonally, it was all over the place.
Yeah.
Whereas this second one had like a much more streamlined plot, and it was much more. And I watched them dubbed because it was late last night, and then it didn't bother me that much. Last night, so I watched the second.
Put my hand over my eyes, like when Matt said drop that bombshell, and I was like, "You call yourself a movie fan, and you've watched the dubbed version of two French films."
But I also feel like the same way about animated movies, where I'll watch it dubbed because animation is dubbed.
I think I will allow it with animation, and this is probably where my argument's going to fall apart. But
with action, what I would say is I want to be watching the film. Ordinarily I would watch subtitles, but I just, last night it was because I'd had a very long day at work and I just wanted to get this one done. And then today was like, I didn't mind it. It's fine. I'll just
today you were like, well, now I know what the man's pretend voice sounds like, and I want to hear that again. I don't want to hear.
Well, I did watch the whole of Squid Game with that was dubbed, and I thought Squid Game was absolute shit until we switched on the subtitles, and then it was like, oh, it's good. So it can ruin a thing, but I thought I really enjoyed it. Anyway, I enjoyed. So there was characters in the first one that I really liked that just disappeared halfway through the film. Yeah, and then with this second one, there are loads of familiar faces from the first film, and then I just felt like it was much more streamlined, and they just got on with it. I really liked it. I've never seen any of the Fast and the Furious movies, but if I was to describe this film, I would say it was The French and the Furious, or it was Le Fast et le Furious.
Well, your job as the sub-editor for a movie website is safe with that one. Thanks, Nick. I think you can't talk about a car movie anymore without referring to the Fast and the Furious. And I think the key word that you said there is streamlined, and I guess that can apply to cars, but also to this movie. And the first one went straight to Netflix, so I think it knew what it was, but it was also this director's debut feature. So I guess he had a lot to prove, right? And with the sequel, everyone knows what they want from the movie. So Netflix is like, this is successful via our sort of translucent metrics where no one really knows what that means. But someone at Netflix goes, enough people press play on this, make another one. And the reason people press play on this is because there were cars skidding around a lot and there was a big fight in a police station. Can you please replicate that with twice as much money?
Yes, there wasn't as much car. What I would say is for a film that is about stealing cars and driving, I wouldn't say that the chases were particularly extensive or flashy. It felt like they were operating to the very extent of their budget. And there's a lot on there, but there's a lot on there on screen. But I would say the standout action sequences aren't the driving sequences.
Interesting.
Although in the second film, there's like some amazing bits when they're on the road, but all the cars are parked and they're shooting at each other. And that's really tense. But it's like, and there's cars there, but they're not driving the cars. They're kind of hiding behind the cars. And
no one goes to see a movie for the car, but hiding behind parts.
It's really weird, isn't it? Because one of I would say probably one of the things that the people that made it would pitch it as, or one of the things that, like, he's got like this sort of like electrical forklift truck thing that he's got on the front of his car. And I've only just remembered that that's part of the film, whereas you'd think that was like the selling point of the film. Like, hey, this guy's got like this electric car that when he puts these like tongs underneath the car in front, that bit's brilliant when they're exploding the cars.
Yes.
And the cars are flying up in the air and landing. That
is the most Fast and the Furious part of the whole movie, I would say.
Yeah.
The most ludicrously entertaining part.
When I'm sort of like saying, this is what I think the Fast and the Furious films must be like. It's kind of like there's cops and then there's robbers and they've got families and they've got relationships and, you know, they're trying to invest you in kind of like their lives.
Yeah.
And then there's this car stuff on top of it. And it's kind of like a little bit like an action soap opera. And that's what I imagine the Fast and the Furious movies to be like.
Pretty dead on, actually, yeah.
But there's this sequence when he's got these, you know, these prongs out the front of his car, and he like basically he drives up to the behind the car, and he puts these prongs underneath the car, and then he charges this electrical thing, and then the back of the car explodes.
For some reason, it flies 30 feet in the air.
It flies 30 feet in the air, and I just remember watching it going like, they must have storyboarded it, but the way that they filmed it feels kind of like random.
Like when Lance Henriksen's jacket goes on fire. Feels like that.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like they would have definitely planned it, but what I liked about it was that it felt kind of casual, the way that they executed it.
Well, I think it's because it's so practical, right? To your CG point before, I didn't see any CG in this movie where I was like, that's definitely CG. There's definitely a bit where they're driving down a motorway the wrong way and there's a lot of cars coming at them. And I think nowadays the smart way to do that is to probably CG a lot of those cars in, but it's not bad CG and it's not obvious. And when these cars get shot, 30 feet in the air, they're clearly just real cars flying in the air. And there is just something so delightful about watching that.
Yeah. They've dropped a car on a speeding car. And it's kind of like, well, how do they do that? Well, that's how they did it. They did it. You're right. I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it in terms of CGI, but there was loads of practical stuff. And like you said, in the first film, he has this sequence where he escapes from a holding cell where he's being interviewed by the police, and he escapes and then he fights his way out of the police station. And they kind of do it again in this one, and that's like the instigating part of the film that gets the whole ball rolling. And then it's like this unstoppable kind of like chase movie, really.
It really is, isn't it? Well, from that moment on, that's like 37 minutes in or something. It just doesn't stop from then till the end. It's just chasing, arguably.
Because the film is an hour and 40 minutes long. And I remember I felt like it was getting to like the middle of the film, and I checked the time and there was 15 minutes left. And I was like, well, we're basically gearing up to the finale.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good sign of a film where it kind of, I felt the first film was a little bit of a slog. And I think that what they would have learned from that was that we don't need all of these characters. We've got so many characters and we're trying to do so much plot. And actually, when we got to the second film, let's just get rid of all of that and stream. Like you say, it's longer than the first film, but it just zipped by. It felt, very economic, and it paid off. It was great.
I think you're absolutely right. They have stripped it down to what, the brass tacks of it, the bare bones of the movie are. What do we want? We want this guy, being sort of angry. We want him like brawling. We want him driving cars, and I think that is both its best quality and probably its worst quality, because I think they've stripped it so bare, to use a car analogy, that the plot gets quite convoluted and confusing about 2/3 of the way in, where it's like, wait, what is everyone's motive at this point?
Yeah.
It's sort of like everyone's like, I'm going to get you. Oh, I got you. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Well, now, all right, now I'm on your side. We got to go over there. Get these. They sort of set up the baddies at the beginning as being part of this larger organization, and there's sort of the guy who you think is like the sort of end of level boss, who's like, when he's in the fight, he's a little bit hard, and you're like, oh great. And this is another movie bugbear of mine. I hope those two get to have a good old scrap later. And then that guy's character just isn't fleshed out in any way, and then he's just kind of a faceless sort of amorphous blob of baddies moving around for the rest of the movie. And I think that loses like a little bit of the cops and robbers. It's just like sort of robbers being chased by, like a Pac-Man ghost. Like there's no, that didn't feel as good as the first movie, in that the first movie had like the twists and the drama of we're discovering, there's dirty cops and stuff. Whereas this one lays it out. There's dirty cops. Guess what? There's even more dirty cops that you didn't know about. And so we continue.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't follow the plot at all. And when you asked me to summarize the film, I mean, I avoided it because
You very much did, didn't you? You dodged that one.
I wouldn't be able to tell you what the film was about, but what it feels like is that it's like an epilogue to the first film. The first film felt kind of complicated, and then this film felt like, and then this is what happens with all the characters, and it takes them to their logical conclusion. What I really liked was the main guy's special move, which is he'll grab someone by the head and punch them in the face, and then he'll look up at someone else and make eye contact with them while he's just smashing this guy in the face. I think they did that in the first film, and I was like, that's fucking psychotic. And then there's a sequence at the beginning of the second film where he does it again, and you go, yeah, they've thought about that as like a character thing. I like that. I thought that was, I've not seen that in another film before, where you've just got a guy that's mercilessly punching another guy in the face, and then he just looks up at someone else.
Like, you're next.
Well, I've got overexcited. I've smashed everything. But like he's made direct eye. It's like a real power move, isn't it? He's
Very much
made
so,
eye contact with people that are running into the room to attack him, and he's just smashing a guy's face in.
It's the bit where you go, if you guys had any sense, this is where you would leave. And they're like,
run.
I'll just watch him snap my friend's arm, and now I think I'll have a go. I reckon I've got a chance.
Yeah, it's a funny little power play, and I liked that came back in the second one.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if you know this, but or how official it is, but it seems at least, I mean, it's super suggested, and I think it's a shoo-in, but there is going to be a third movie.
Great. It'll be like John Wick for me,
right?
Where the first film was fine. I loved the second film, and then I never watched the third.
Then you just don't watch anymore until 2 years' time when I invite you back on the podcast
for the fourth one, and then I'll be like, all right, I'll binge it.
I will say that as much as, yes, I'm delighted to see A Lost Bullet 3. Why not? Obviously, this guy absolutely knows what he's doing. The director I'm talking about, Guillaume Pire, and 3, if they give him the same or more money, he's going to make an absolute treat of a movie with it. It did feel, by dint of that maybe going into this, they were like, well, we'll probably make a third one. So it felt like there wasn't quite as much closure. I mean, there is some closure for our hero Lino to some degree, but the whole sort of like mechanism that sets the whole thing in motion, and indeed the bad guy from the first movie just, is sort of glossed over for the entirety of the movie. And then at the end, I guess spoilers, I assume at this point, most people will have watched this. They're kind of like, oh yeah, remember this guy? He's still around. Remember that? He's still around.
Well, I think that's great. Well, yeah, when you make the first film, you know that there's only going to be one film, but when you've made the second one, there's already more than one. So, we're in sequel territory now. So set them up. One thing is, I really did love that the climax of the film was in kind of like a beef restaurant, and like a deserted roadside beef restaurant, and
Spanish beef.
And I really liked it. It wasn't this huge climax. It was 3 people fighting in a deserted restaurant that hadn't opened yet, that was getting ready to open up for the day, and it didn't feel budgetary. It felt like that's exactly the sort of place that they would have been on. The film has to be set on a road because it's got cars in it.
And we've already fired the cars 30 feet in the air. Like, that's the climax, right? That's what was in the trailer. That's what you all came here for.
It's this nice little intimate kind of like scene between these 3 people, or 4 people, including the waitress. And I think I really liked that. It felt like, like at the end of Kindergarten Cop, when it all got sort of, everything comes down to they're in the showers and in the gym, and they're like stalking each other. It felt like it was everything. You had this big adventure, and then everything sort of like became very sort of like focused in a small space.
It sort of humanizes it, I suppose, doesn't it? Because it's like after all the car chasing and exploding, it comes back to, oh, this guy is mad at this guy because he killed his brother. Remember that? When you take away all the cars flying in the air, this guy wants revenge on this guy. And I did the way that he was dispatched did make me go, oh, which I think is always quite good. A sort of like,
he ain't coming back.
Oh, goodness. No, exactly. And yet I guess everyone else is. And the main baddie from the first one is going to be livid when he finds out that Lino's shacked up with his wife conveniently, which felt like that happened quite quickly after he'd punched a guy in the face while looking at some other guys. The wife gave him a little look and it was like, oh, he's not a stalker anymore. The Stockholm syndrome kicked in.
What I would say is a lot of the actors look like each other. And then at the end, when the bad guy from the first film turns back up again and he's got a grey beard, the main bad guy in this film has got a grey beard. And then you kind of like go, is that, oh, right, that's a different guy. Right, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, he's the guy from the first film.
Who we haven't seen for the entirety of the movie, yeah.
It was quite possible that he was recast for the sequel and that it was just a different actor. And then at the end you go, oh, no, it wasn't the same character, as a different character. And there are several characters that the main hero, he kind of like looks like one of the other cops that's on his trail. So I would actually watch it again, but I didn't get like really invested in the story and all of that. I just felt like I enjoyed the ride without reading too much into any of it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Well, I was reading some stuff afterwards just to sort of recap and remember stuff. And I read a review that said something about Lino, the main guy, shacks up or with his dead brother's wife and kid. And I was like, wait, was it his dead? That wasn't his brother's wife. And then I had to go back and watch the movie and go, no, that's the baddie policeman's wife and kid. So, I mean, there are places that can confuse. Let's put it that way. And as I said, I think the motives and things do get a little bit, the wires get a bit tangled towards the end, and everyone's sort of you're like, what do we actually want to happen in an ideal world here? We know he wants revenge, but he's already sort of had the opportunity now, and then this is, and then it's, Well, I'd sort of forgotten about the bad guy from the first one, and then when he came back again at the end of this one, it was like, oh yeah, there is that. I guess this feels like, I suppose, if you're going to be really unkind about this film, it feels like a cross between an epilogue to the first film. So it's not like it's not really its own film. It's kind of like an epilogue and a bit of a placeholder before you get to the next one. But I guess they know what they're doing and they're setting it up. But that would be the unkind way of looking at it. But I think that what they've done is they've taken the first film and they've just streamlined it. And I think that they are aiming at it was pretty ridiculous, this film. But from my understanding of the later Fast and the Furious movies, they're basically not driving, right? They're like, they get
like
more
surfing on cars and they're flying a car into space.
Sure.
And it's kind of like, is there actually a single real car in any of the Fast and the Furious movies? Or is it all just CGI? Whereas this is kind of like, it feels like it's because of, it's French. It doesn't have like the same budget that a massive franchise like that has.
It's more grounded.
That's in its favour. It's grounded and it feels real. And even when the stunts are ridiculous, they feel like they're really happening. They're really dropping cars out of the sky. Yeah. And the explosions are real.
And I do think the nature of it being French does sort of add a little, like a je ne sais quoi, it's like, well, European movies, it's not Hollywood. Anyone can die. There's a lot of surprises in that first one where like, oh God, they've just killed someone. There's a different sensibility to Hollywood, even though it is made for Netflix and internationally.
Yeah. But in that first film, there was that bit when the bent cop, he goes in and he hasn't got any shotgun shells. So he's just going to beat the guy to death with the butt of his gun. And then the guy buys himself a bit more time. And in the next scene, the cop comes out and the butt of his gun is just covered in blood. And you know that he's just bludgeoned him to death. Wasn't that in the first film? Oh, you didn't watch it
That
last
sounds
night
about
like
right.
I did.
I didn't watch it last night. No, I watched it 2 years ago.
But even that, you kind of like go, oh look, the blood is real. You know, they put real blood on the gun, and it's all tactile and practical stuff. And
yeah, and there's a bit in the second one where the Spanish cop sort of comes to save the day at one point, and very casually sticks his shotgun in a car and destroys two people, and you're like, oh, okay. Well, I guess that's.
I thought they were main characters. I thought they were main characters.
I thought they were going to be
like the main antagonists, and then they're just like, okay, they're not in it anymore. I get you. There's something about these kind of like Netflix films where if it's an American film, it feels like a bit of a step down from a big Hollywood movie. But because this is French and it's got a Netflix budget, it feels like they've really embraced like this cash injection that they've had. Do you know what I mean? It feels like they've kind of like they're used to small budgets, and then Netflix have given them like a bit of cash to do something with it, and they've really gone for it, and it doesn't fit. I just remembering like that Sandra Bullock Bird Box movie, which was like, it was a Netflix film, and there was something about like the pacing of it and everything down to the cast and the way that it's kind of shot. It all feels like it's Netflix, and I didn't get that from this film. It didn't feel like this huge Hollywood production that was kind of scaled down. It felt like they'd been given just enough extra money to have a bit of fun, and they use it well. It's sparing
while retaining their own sort of artistic control and direction and French sensibilities.
It's not 90 minutes of just stunts and explosions and CGI and everything like that. It's like there's a bit of a story, and there are some pretty cool sequences, and it's kind of like it's an action movie in like a very sort of classical sense, where you've got a guy and he's in a prison cell, and he breaks out of the prison cell, and now he's in a police station, and he beats up everyone in the police station, and then he gets into a car, and then he's in a car, and then the car, and that's kind of like each action sequence moves into the next action sequence, and it kind of takes it along for the entire duration of the film. And it's something you can get involved with and you can get absorbed in, and I really enjoyed that. And it's not just like a bombardment of, we haven't got enough money to do, like Plane, it's like we haven't got enough money to do any of these special effects well.
Man, this movie is taking a lot of flack. It's not even out yet.
I know, but it's just, you can just tell, can't you? You're just looking at it and you go, everything about it looks cheap. And they haven't got enough budget to do any of the bits well. So they've just made everything, rather than cut bits out and scale it down and go, well, we'll put all of our money into this sequence or that sequence. They've just spread all, it's like
everything's average.
Spread too thin. Everything is average, yeah. Whereas with this, there is plot and there's dialogue scenes and there is just scenes of people driving fast and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then there are spikes of action and entertainment. And like I say, the climax of the film is three people in a deserted restaurant, which couldn't have cost loads as a location.
Beef restaurant. Yeah.
A beef restaurant. It couldn't have cost loads as a location. It was like, it must have been like a real roadside restaurant that they've gone, we're filming here today. And it just feels like, it feels right and it feels real.
It's so much nicer than a massive green screen studio though as well, right? Like it feels tangible.
Where the climax of the film is happening with a wide shot of New York and an explosion coming out of a building into the sky and people flying around, and you kind of like go, what am I meant to be focused on here?
Yeah.
It's like, it's small. It's like one dining room in a restaurant, and it's great.
Yeah. In its favor as well is this is this director's second feature. Like he's still hungry, and now like the first one's successful enough. They're like, do you want to make another one? Goddamn right. And I went on a little deep dive after I watched this, because I was like, well, I definitely want to see behind the scenes of how they shot a car 30 feet in the air quickly. And he's got a YouTube channel, and it's got, the promo stuff for this, but it's also got like shorts that he shot on a mini DV cam like 14 years ago. And it's just like these sort of dialogue-less 9-minute action movies of like a few guys in someone's deserted farmhouse with shotguns. And I was like, well, this is like, it's just really, really well shot. Like he's got a great eye for putting it together. I'm like, how did he get shotguns when he was like a no budget filmmaker? There's a little behind the scenes. They just had firecrackers. So every shot that was like someone shooting a gun at something and it exploding, there's just like the actors setting fire to a firecracker underneath something and then quickly reacting to it. It was just such good, like, it just put me in mind of all, like reading Robert Rodriguez books back in the day and like being really excited about that sort of indie guerrilla filmmaking. And this guy is like a guy who's just been making low zero budget short action movies. He was somehow, one of his shorts had like cars crashing into each other, and I'm just like, how can you crash cars into each other in a zero budget short film? I was really impressed. And it's just like the logical step. The next one looks a bit better, and then he's got one that just, is really well shot, and then it's got some cool car stuff. It's literally got a guy putting a shotgun into a car and shooting people. Like, it's those sort of, that like years worth of bag of tricks that you've been working on, and then somebody gives you that opportunity. It's like your first Netflix special or whatever. You're like, well, this is what I've been working on for the last 10 years, you guys. And then you're like, pow, 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 pow. And it's so great to see that sort of directorial journey of somebody's finally giving you the keys, no car pun intended, to the kingdom. And you're just like, free reign. I'm going to shoot cars 30 feet in the air. He's going to fight 10 people. It's going to be absolutely great.
Yeah, I agree. I loved it.
Big fan. Nicholas, there's only one more thing we have to do. Thank you so much, by the way, for your time here. I know you're on a tight schedule.
I've really enjoyed it.
There's one little part, and it is called the action replay moment. What one moment in this film, if you could pick it out and make, say, a GIF out of it or a GIF, if you had to name one little bit, what would be your action replay moment?
Oh, I think it's definitely when the third car falls from the sky, because it's so casual the way it's filmed. It obviously was planned, and they're dropping a car from the sky, but the way the way the camera is kind of set up, it feels like it's it's kind of I can't think of the word. It just feels like such a casual way, like the car kind of like avoids it. And then the other car that's dropping, there's a car that's driving and a car that drops from the sky, and the car kind of like dodges it a little bit, but it kind of like crashes into it, and it kind of feels like
dangerous. Yeah,
it feels like it was like dangerous, and it feels like it was real, and it feels like maybe there wasn't a safety officer on site that day. Yeah. But I would say that kind of sums up the film, really.
Yeah. The tangible danger and practical stunts and effects feeling. I'm just going to pick a bit right at the beginning where we first see Lino duff up the guys. I think it comes right after the bit that you talked about where he's punching the guy in the face while staring at the other guy. Where there's a guy whose head is just at level with a kitchen counter, and he uses like a breadboard, just sort of slides it and twanks him right in the face. It's just a lovely. I love use of props in fight scenes.
Yeah, because you'd think, what can I use in my house?
Yeah.
That would. Yeah.
He absolutely clocks him. Nick, I think we've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. It's our birthday episode, Nick. I don't know if I told you that, and I don't know if I played this sound. Great. But there it is to bookend the podcast. If people want to find you out and about in the world and or on the internet superhighway, is there anywhere you'd like to direct them?
I'm on Twitter at the Nick Helm, and I tweet about films that no one cares about. And I'm also on Instagram, and I really love Instagram. I don't know how to use Twitter basically, but I know how to. I love Instagram. So I'm on Instagram as the Nick Helm as well. And I've got my own film quiz podcast called the Film Quiz Podcast that you can find by typing in the Film Quiz Podcast that I host.
I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes, mate. They don't even need to type it in.
We have a load of British comedians that come on and talk about films. And most of them don't know anything. We've done 6 episodes. We haven't had our first birthday yet, Simon. Happy birthday.
Thank you. It hurts my ears when I play it. It's too loud. As ever, the podcast exists on Twitter at Dodge This Pod. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Simon Fielder. I also joined Mastodon this week because I love wasting my own time. But I made a video about it, so you too can work out that it's probably not worth getting on there unless you love programming. We'll be back in, let's hope, Nick, it's 2 weeks. Let's hope it's 2 weeks. Will Matthew return to the podcast? Join us on the next episode to find out. Nick Helm, once again, thank you so much. This has been Dodge This, Action Movies Unleashed.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.